So we are well and truly in the midst of the transfer window, in the summer window. We've got Euros right here in front of us from match day to match day. But in between these big games, we wanted to keep on top of all the transfer rumours. And one of the most intriguing ones that is kind of playing out in England at the moment is the potential or seemingly imminent move of Jhon Duran from Aston Villa to Chelsea. A young player, guys, who made the move to Villa last summer, if I'm not mistaken, for... just 16 million euros. Numbers have been kind of, talked about are much higher than that. I believe he's got a £35 million release clause, so about close to 40 million euros. That's what Aston Villa are looking for. Ben, this might seem like a bit of an odd move. It might be a move that kind of raised a few eyebrows for people who don't watch Villa, for people who don't watch Chelsea, but why don't you just try and explain this one to those of us who maybe don't follow Chelsea or Aston Villa? Why are the Stamford Bridge side going so hard in for a player who only scored 5 league goals for Villa last season?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think it probably is quite a hard one to explain, but as have a lot of Chelsea's transfer incomings in the last couple of years. Jhon Duran, I think he's got a lot of potential. He showed that with a few of his cameos last season at Villa. He looked a real threat for the bench, but obviously Ollie Watkins, having the season he had, chances were limited. And he didn't start many games. It was coming from the bench and trying to make an impact. I just think it seems a strange one from Chelsea's perspective. We know both Aston Villa and Chelsea are reportedly in danger of falling on the wrong side of the PSR profit and sustainability rules, so may need to sell players this month. So for Chelsea to be splashing out close to 40 million euros for a player who hasn't played a lot of Premier League football, when they've got Nicholas Jackson, who I personally think had a decent first season in the Premier League, very raw, but he got 10 goals, held up the ball really well. I think there could be something in there. I don't think it's time to give up on him. You've got to remember as well, they've got Christopher and Nkunku coming back. There was so much hype around him at the start of last season about him potentially starting the season. Obviously, he had those injury problems. If you've got him back in the fold as well, you've already got Nkunku and Jackson, and you've got money problems. I don't think that's really where the area of priority should be for Chelsea right now, personally.
Yeah, and this just kind of sums up the kind of weird way that Chelsea kind of morph and distort the transfer window, isn't it? Because we've got a player who, according to all stats, and I remember we actually did a video on this very YouTube channel talking about Duran moving to Aston Villa. I mean, a lot of MLS fans kind of, chime in saying he's a really good player. He's got 8 goals and 6 assists in 20 games for Chicago Fire. Goes to Aston Villa, hasn't exactly lit things up, but even after quite a subpar performance, it looks like Villa could maybe triple the value of a player in one season. But is it just a case of Chelsea basically just doing what they've been doing since Todd Bowley came in, where they just hoover up as many young players as they can, they'll pay what they have to pay, and basically they can loan this guy out to Belgium, to Italy, to France, to Germany for the next 4 or 5 seasons, and if he doesn't work out, they'll probably make their money back?
Yeah, it certainly looks that way. I mean, Chelsea's interest in the player has been well documented for some time. Not long after he joined Villa, he's been linked constantly to Chelsea, and I think it makes sense for the player to want to move to Chelsea. He's moving to a bigger club, albeit he's not playing Champions League football. Villa is very much second fiddle to Ollie Watkins. He's a bit part role last season, 8 goals in all competitions, but he's a player that I think has got huge potential. He's very raw. You don't know what we're going to get from him from week to week, but his base characteristics, his pace, his strength, is quite impressive. I think he's well suited to playing Premier League football. From Chelsea's point of view, Nicholas Jackson's numbers were actually okay last season. If you look at his numbers in isolation, his performances were incredibly inconsistent. He missed lots of chances. So I think Jhon Duran's a player who Chelsea can maybe bring in and look to compete with Nicholas Jackson next season. I don't think Nicholas Jackson's nailed down a starting role for next season. It'll all come down to what the new manager Enzo Maresca wants to do, and he might be a manager who likes the prospect of Duran.
Yeah, before we wrap this up, Ben, let's just turn briefly to Aston Villa and what happens if they do sell him. Obviously, as you mentioned, they are under some sort of obligation to sell players this summer before they can bring players in, because they're under some strict financial rules in the Premier League. And there's also some talk that Ian Maatsen, the left back who was on loan at Borussia Dortmund, could go the other way as part of this deal. But as good as Ollie Watkins has been for Villa this season, he has been somewhat overplayed. He has been over-relied upon for much of the campaign. And while Jhon Duran obviously hasn't played that much football, you'd imagine Villa fans wouldn't be overly excited about losing their second-choice striker if they have any hope of, competing in Europe, the Champions League in particular, and the Premier League next season.
Yeah, exactly. I think, as you mentioned before, they want that 45 million to basically triple their money on it. I think they won't settle for anything less, because then they would have to go out and buy another striker. Because, as you said, Watkins, he was overplayed. Obviously, he won't play much of the Euros this summer unless anything happens to Kane, maybe a couple of appearances off the bench. But they will need to bring somebody else in. There's obviously rumours about Douglas Luiz as well, closing in on that deal to Juventus. 2 other players come in the other way, maybe Samuel Jr. So it's a bit of a strange month this for Aston Villa in terms of their ingoings and outgoings. But yeah, for me, I can understand why they'd want to sell Duran if they can get around 40 million euros for him, because he hasn't really proven a lot, but there is potential there. I think anything less, they should be looking to keep him to try and compete with Watkins next season.
Yeah, very interesting deal, very interesting rumour. You guys can, of course, let us know in the comments below what you think. If you're a Chelsea fan, let us know if you think it's a good signing by the club. If you're an Aston Villa fan, let us know if you're happy to cash in on the young striker and move on to other players. And of course, you can keep on top of all the transfer news over at Transfermarkt. You can head to our rumour mill where people are discussing in the forums all of these deals. I've got the Aston Villa page open in front of me. We've got Ian Matson, Guendouzi, Tammy Abraham, Weston McKennie, of course, Ross Barkley are the most recent rumours linked to Villa. So you can head over there to our forum, sign up and chat with other Villa fans about these deals. Until next time, we'll speak to you soon.